So I'm sitting here with my friend Curtis, who I can't fully recall, it might have been my mama, but I definitely know that I heard about you back in sort of the weird times in England, and I heard about you helping people clear out their gardens to start them on a growing your own adventure and getting back connected to food and local food systems and also community, because you were doing it with a few people. Would you like to expand a little bit on that for the people, just like how you got into it and what was the intention with that?
Well, from a young age I've been really interested in spending time in nature, because it makes me feel a particular way, and also I was really shy. So the more time I spend in nature, the less time I have to spend with people.
Yeah.
But as time went on, I thought I'd like to get into botany. I thought I'd like to become a botanist one day. So I'd get my books, spend a lot of time out in nature. I live right next to a forest, and just learn about what's growing all around me.
Amazing.
Initially it was plants, but you can't help but notice all the creatures that are around too.
Any favourites?
In terms of plants
And creatures?
in creatures, probably kingfishers, because they're so colourful and you hardly ever see them, and when you do see them it's like, wow, I've actually seen one of these amazing birds. In more recent times, the parakeets, which you probably heard a few seconds ago, because I always thought that birds like that couldn't survive in this sort of climate, but somehow they've managed to naturalise themselves in at least this part of England.
Yeah.
So wanted to become a botanist, and then I thought maybe it would be more interesting to grow plants rather than just study about them. So my interest kind of switched to more gardening.
Yeah.
And both my parents were gardeners.
Okay.
My mum would grow flowers in the front garden, like Dad would grow vegetables in the back garden.
Amazing. And where is this?
In Leytonstone,
Okay.
which is basically one road away from Epping Forest.
Yeah, beautiful.
So, because I was born in Domenica and I moved to London when I was 7 years old. And I was so happy that I was next to Epping Forest.
Yeah.
Because then I've got all that expanse to just go out and roam. So getting back to the gardening, I had my bedroom at home and I grew all sorts of plants on the windowsill. At the time I used to have yogurt, so I kept the pots and used those for growing my plants in. And soon I ran out of space on the windowsill. So I kind of persuaded my mum to allow me to use the front garden. So I started off with one patch, and then eventually I was growing stuff all over the front garden. And as if that wasn't enough, I persuaded my dad to give me a corner of the back garden, because that's where he grew his veg. But I had like one little patch about 6 feet, 4 feet across, and I grew herbs, vegetables. I even grew a little eucalyptus tree in there.
Amazing.
And for me, those two areas were like a really good step forward in terms of practically growing things outside.
Yeah.
As time went on, I did gardening for my teachers in primary school.
Wow.
And somewhere in my mid-teens, I started working for friends and family to maintain their gardens. This went on for years. Eventually I went to college and actually studied horticulture, which the main reason for me studying doing a course in horticulture was because I thought I'd need some qualifications if I'm applying for work sometime in the future. But as it goes, after 3 years of studying and being offered work at many places, not one of them asked me about my qualifications.
Exactly.
So.
Yep. Great point to mention.
Yeah. But in the past few years, I've really been thinking about the importance of growing your own food, because probably the main thing is health. Most food is grown the conventional way. Lots of different chemicals used in the ground, used in the air, used on plants. I don't think that's the best way. Nature's been in existence for countless millennia, and it's been doing really well. And where it's left alone, you can see how it really excels and looks amazing and feels amazing to be in. So, in the past few years, I've been encouraging local people to grow their own foods. Again, the prices are going up in the shops, and people are more conscious about what they put into their bodies. So I've been putting the word around. I spoke to a few friends, and they spoke to others. And what we decided to do was do some volunteer gardening. So we have a few people who offer the space in their garden, and it could be like the whole garden or just one section, and we transform that to grow vegetables. And there's one main condition in that: whoever allows us to grow the food on their land allows us to share the produce.
Beautiful community spirit.
Yeah, definitely. And when I came up with that idea, it was really well received, talking to others about it. But it's greater than what I ever imagined, because it's not just about growing food and saving money and being healthier. When you listen to the reactions of everyone who are participating and listen to the way they interact with each other, or watch the way they interact, it's so fantastic. It's so fulfilling.
I love that.
Because I do maintenance gardening. I design gardens as my main work, but I do this as a voluntary scheme. And the amount of satisfaction I get from seeing everyone getting so much from this activity is just amazing. And it makes me want to do more of it.
I know, it's amazing.
So,
and so with your knowledge of your father and things that you were growing as a kid, what types of things were you growing to then also here in the UK? What sort of like little preferences do people have to grow, or what's the easiest?
well, a lot of salad vegetables are super easy to grow, like tomatoes, certain peas and carrots and so on, because those are some of the first food plots I actually grew. And for many people who are not used to gardening or think they don't have much knowledge or skill in gardening, they're really good crops to get started with. And when you do grow your first lot, you might have some that do better than others, but it's a really good experience because you get a great deal of satisfaction, and also to realize that you can grow your own, so you're having more of an input into your health and how you can control certain aspects of your health.
Beautiful. It's like that permaculture sort of concept where the 360, you know, what you put in, you get out. And
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting you mentioned about permaculture as well, because again, in more recent times, I've been studying permaculture and trying to apply many of the principles. One of the main aspects of permaculture is observing nature and seeing how things grow in nature, how they interrelate with each other. And again, in areas where nature is left to do its own thing, where human development hasn't impinged on it too much,
absolutely,
it seems to thrive so well at its best, actually. So recycling your compost, where, for example, some people think something is a problem, like a wild plant. They usually call wild plants weeds, but they're missing an opportunity, or many opportunities. Like, for example, dandelions, they spring up all over the place, and people spend lots of effort, time and money trying to get rid of them. but every single part of it's useful.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah? Flowers, leaves, roots, use it as medicine, use it as food. Great for the bees as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, on that note as well, if we're going to talk more into sort of the wild plants, you have moved into a lot more foraging and have been leading some walks and things. And so, would you like to share anything with the people on that? And what
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting that again, I've been doing foraging without really thinking about it, because while I'm out and about, especially in Epping Forest, cherries come into season, some of the hazelnuts come into season, or blackberries, which everyone knows about. But there's just so much that's growing all around you that's edible.
Yeah.
And or useful in other ways, like having medicinal properties. But in general, we just walk by them unless it's something really familiar. We don't really know about them. So I decided to just learn a lot more and sort of remember some of the knowledge I had. And I thought it'd be a great idea to introduce it to nearest people around me.
Amazing.
And I've foraged in many places, usually in North London, even on the coastline more recently.
Beautiful.
And the amount of interest is fantastic, because what many say to me is that they, on their day-to-day walks, they might be in a park or even in their own garden, they see stuff growing, but just don't realise what it is. Even the fact that it's there, because they recognise it from the rest of the greenery. So it kind of inspires them to learn more and to be more observant as they go by.
And so you've also been doing mushrooms and fungi. Like, are there any faves that you like to forage? Any particular seasons?
Let's see. When I've been looking for mushrooms, seems like autumn, probably mid to late autumn's a really good time, because the rain has had time to fall. There's a lot of moisture around, and they love that for thriving and reproducing. But close to where I live in Enfield, there's an area called 40 Hill. And if you venture way out into the woods, the far end of the woods, lots of the fallen trees, it seems to be mainly one type of tree, seems to be mainly elderberry trees. They're covered with this sort of mid-brown, jelly-looking like fungus.
Okay.
Yeah? And when you walk up to it, it seems, and you look all around it, it seems like the ear, like a human ear, for example. So if you flip it up, it's got lighter colour underneath, it's got all the wrinkles and so on. But better still is that when you flick it with your finger, it really wobbles like a bit of jelly. So I find that quite entertaining, like watching it. But I tried cooking it for the first time last year.
Nice.
And it's like really unusual, nothing like you would expect. I dropped it into a pan with coconut oil, and within seconds it sort of came alive. It was jumping into the air, so I had to get a lid to kind of contain it. Yeah. And when it was cooked, it only took like a couple of minutes, but it tasted a bit like a crisp, a vegetable crisp. Crispy on the outside but slightly crunchy on the inside.
Yummy.
So it was an interesting texture. In terms of flavour, there wasn't too much flavour coming through, but I was just sampling it.
Yeah.
And in fact, when you're foraging, if you're not used to something, if you haven't tried it before, it's a good idea just to have a small amount.
Yeah, practice.
Wait a day or two, see if there's any reactions, and if you're okay, then you can have a bit more.
Yeah, because health disclaimer, we're not medical practitioners, but we're just like trying our bits at old school methods of hunting and gathering.
Definitely. And I'm sure that's what our ancestors would have done thousands of years ago.
Exactly. Well, talking about the ancestors and you have a big connection to Domenica and the islands, and without sharing or revealing anything, long term, but is there things that you miss from having grown up in that environment, and any herbs or anything that you think, okay, I'm really grateful for that lesson or that plant knowledge, or?
Well, Domenica, where I was born, is a really amazing island. In fact, the nickname for it is Nature Island of the Caribbean.
Okay, didn't know that.
And in order for you to really appreciate that name, you have to experience it. What I love about it is that it's covered with mountains, and the mountains are covered with greenery.
So beautiful.
And every direction you look, there are mountains. And every village you go through, there are rivers. And I love following the rivers upstream. And as you walk further into the mountains and you look up to the side, you look all around you, you notice like how lush, how diverse the vegetation is. But
Yeah.
the further you walk in, the lusher it becomes, because generally it's wetter as you move towards the centre of the island.
Yeah.
So from kind of almost deserty kind of environment by the coast on the Caribbean side to rainforest, cloud forests, where it's raining almost every single day.
Yeah.
And yeah, so there's a wide variety of plants in there, but some plants which I have fond memories of, because the villages were on the coastline generally. People grew their food and a few different types of crops directly around the houses.
Yeah.
But the main area where they grew stuff was where they call the gardens, which are actually small farms. A lot of people don't understand it more if it said small farms.
Okay.
They were tucked away at the back of the valley, up on the hills, some of the valleys further into the mountains, where the weather or the ground conditions were better for growing. So moisture would hang around for longer, or generally have more rainfall.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing fields of bananas and planted in between of coconuts. And I have such fond memories of like looking at the bunches of bananas developing pure dark green, and then as the weeks go by you see a little touch of yellow appearing, and that expands, and then a few more, and it's as if it's like decorations on the plant.
Yeah.
Or a special light being placed on the plant, and it's so inviting.
So sweet.
And
Yeah.
you know when they're ready because the birds start hanging around. And you look at a decent ripe banana and you think, yeah, I'll have that one. And you look around the side of it and the birds have started to dig into it. But I'd still eat those, because
Yeah.
if the birds are eating it, it must be
Exactly.
good.
Yeah, it's a good sign, isn't it? In
yeah,
nature,
yeah,
what the
yeah.
animals eat, we can also
Definitely.
do well on.
But also along the river banks, not so much in this particular area I'm thinking of, is behind the village I grew up. There are these large trees which grow generally along the river's edges, and they had big pods which would drop down into the water, and when they split they look like little boats. So if you could imagine two hard shells side to side, and a boat shape in the middle. And as a young boy, me and some of my friends and cousins, we'd find a few of these and have races on the river.
Oh, I love
So
it.
just find a nice bit of flowing water
What a
and
beautiful way
see
to
how
live.
quickly they get from one point to the next.
So lovely.
Yeah. But one other thing which really brought back super powerful memories was back in the village. If you walk up the hillsides, there are far fewer houses, because most of the houses are down at ground level, where the ground is flatter. So as you go up the hillsides, you get all these different scents coming through. So they have various types of wild plants which are used as herbs, or used as, for example, there's a certain type of shrub which is used as a broom, because it has lots
Yeah.
of straight branches parallel to each other, and they make really good brooms for sweeping the yard.
So resourceful.
But
It's just
the
amazing.
smells, whenever I come across something that smells similar, it takes me back to those days of like feeling good and feeling the sun and that atmosphere.
I love that.
Yeah.
And with all of that grounding and earthing knowledge from
Yeah.
your past and the world that we're sort of, well, we create our own reality, but the world we're moving into these days, what knowledge or wisdom do you anchor yourself in daily, and what would you like to share with the people of when we're feeling a little bit, I don't know, overwhelmed or lost? Is there something that you would like to share?
Yeah, well, I think nature is the key. I grew up on a natural island. When I moved to London at a very young age, I was close to nature, very close to Epping Forest. And in my teens in particular, having various thoughts and anxieties and so on, I felt a bit stressed out. But when I took a walk to the forest, which was every weekend and every summer holiday, I felt so much better. So whatever it was that was bothering me, I would usually forget about it within a short time.
So
And
lovely.
it's not as if I put effort into forgetting about it. I think it's just that environment.
Yeah.
For example, there was a group of beech trees growing in an area of Epping Forest called Wanstead Park. And I'd climb as high as I could into the tree.
Yeah.
And I was so high I can feel it swaying
Oh,
at
I
the
love
top.
it.
But I felt comfortable because it was as if I was being cradled.
Wow.
So I've talked to many people about that experience, and they tell me about their experiences in nature. And I think it's a place that we need to spend more time in.
Yeah.
Because we kind of detach ourselves, and we're into like modern gadgets and city environments where probably most people live in the world now. But nature's always there to provide you with what you need.
I love that. I think it's a beautiful note to end on. Back to nature. Thank you, Curtis.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah.
Bye.